All right, today's video deals with what's called temperature. And temperature is something that you're obviously very familiar with. If you've lived in the United States most of your life, you're probably very familiar with the Fahrenheit scale. The problem with the Fahrenheit scale is you don't really use it in science. And even if you talk about when does water freeze and when does water boil, a lot of times people don't even know the temperatures at which water freezes and boils. So we're not even really going to worry about the Fahrenheit scale. The two different temperature scales that we use in science are the Celsius scale and what's called the Kelvin scale. And if you think about what temperature is really nothing more than a measure of energy. And that's one of the reasons why I really like the Kelvin scale, is because this Kelvin scale, if you notice right here, the lowest temperature you can get to on the Kelvin scale is what's called 0 Kelvin. And that means that whatever the item is that's at 0 Kelvin has absolutely no energy at all. There are no negative temperatures with Kelvin. The lowest temperature you can get to, which again means that the object that you're measuring, its temperature, has no energy left at all. So the Kelvin scale is really, really nice and really, really easy to use. And just to kind of give you some, just like down here, in terms of normal temperatures, 298, not 29, sorry, 298 Kelvin is about 77 degrees Fahrenheit. You're going to see that number quite a bit, because that's basically what we consider room temperature. Okay, and that's actually, and you'll see here in just a minute, that's equal to 25 degrees Celsius. So those two you're going to see quite a bit. Again, Fahrenheit you won't see again in science. Okay, but water does boil at 373 Kelvin. So water boils at 373 and it freezes at 273 Kelvin. Okay, so again, Kelvin scale absolutely is used in science. The lowest temperature possible is absolute zero, called 0 Kelvin. Temperature can't go below zero, so no negatives with Kelvin. And therefore, even in terms of Celsius, the lowest Celsius temperature you can get to is negative 273. And that's because the conversion from Celsius to Kelvin, this one right here, this is a big one, is you take whatever the Celsius temperature is, you simply add 273 to it, and that is the Kelvin temperature. And yes, and on the equation sheet, that equation is given. Okay, this one here is not, but obviously if you know this equation, you can figure out this equation. What if you have this Kelvin temperature and you need to get it to Celsius? Well, you simply subtract 273. So remember up here where I said 298 Kelvin is 25 degrees Celsius, because I took the Kelvin temperature, 298, I subtracted 273, and that gave me my temperature in Celsius. Okay, do notice, just not a big deal here at all, but notice that anytime you have Celsius, you use the degree sign. See that little circle right here? With Kelvin, you don't use a degree sign. Okay, so if it's, notice up here, when I did 298 Kelvin, I just wrote 298 K, not 298 degrees K. Again, I'm not going to mark it wrong if you do that, but typically with Celsius, you use the degree sign. With Kelvin, you don't. Okay, so here you can kind of see three different scales of this. So notice that with Kelvin and Celsius, 373 and 273 is where water boils and freezes. Notice again, you have that same 100-degree interval between the freezing and the boiling in Celsius as well. Because again, the only difference between Celsius and Kelvin is that number 273. You either add 273 or subtract 273. And then you've got your fun little Fahrenheit scale over here. We've got 212 and 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, normal body temperature, obviously 98.6 in Fahrenheit. You're familiar with that number because you've heard it when you go to the doctor. But typically when you go to a doctor's office now, they don't measure your temperature in Fahrenheit, they measure it in Celsius. And so your normal body temperature in Celsius is 37 degrees Celsius. Okay, so yes, you will be asked to convert between Celsius and Kelvin. You will not be asked to convert between Fahrenheit and to Celsius or Kelvin. Okay, so if I give you the temperature in Celsius, absolutely, I want you to convert that Celsius temperature to Kelvin. Very simply, you put the Celsius temperature in here, you add 273, and there's your 298. Okay, so I'll do just a couple of examples here for you. So convert negative 31 degrees Celsius to Kelvin. So remember, Kelvin equals degrees Celsius plus 273. So in this case, Kelvin's going to equal negative 31 plus 273. So I'm going to use my calculator. I'm going to say negative 31 plus 273 equals 242 Kelvin. And example 2, and that's your final answer there, 242 Kelvin. Example 2, 75 Kelvin to Celsius. So if you want, you can just use this equation here. You can start with that equation that again, is in your notes or is on your equation sheet. And you can go, okay, that's the Kelvin temperature. So I can go 75 equals, see how where K was, I put the 75, the degrees Celsius plus 273. And then using algebra, how do I get that C by itself? Well, I have to subtract 273. So 75 minus 273 is going to equal our temperature in Celsius. So 75 minus 273 equals negative 198 degrees Celsius. Okay? So anytime you're converting between Celsius and Kelvin, you're either going to be adding 273 like we did here, or you're going to be subtracting 273. How do you know? Again, always start with our equation right here that Kelvin equals degrees Celsius plus 273. And then if they give you the Celsius temperature, you plug it in here, and then you add 273. If they give you the Kelvin temperature, you plug it in here, and then you subtract 273.